Our next session is HTTP API development with .NET, Azure, and OpenAPI, also known as Paper Cuts Begone, with my good friend Brady Gaster. So that's coming up. Brady.
Hey, how's it going, man?
Great to see you. How are you?
Long time no see.
I know. I know. I'm doing fantastic. Thanks.
Cool. Well, I'm excited to talk to you today. Hope we can get Myra's audio back on, but I'll just get started whenever you let me know.
In the meantime, yours is on, so we're good.
It's good.
All right. Tell us about API development.
Thanks a lot. I'm Brady Gaster. I am a PM on the .NET team. I like to concentrate on all things real-time with SignalR and APIs, REST APIs, HTTP APIs, pick your terminology, is fine with me. As you saw in the keynote, I'm pretty excited to talk to you today about the concept of using OpenAPI or Swagger, if you know what is Swagger, and I'll use the terms interchangeably in your Web API projects. I've been doing this for quite some time, and the updates that we're making right now are pretty exciting to me. I've been really passionate about it for a while. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next slide here. So like we talked about in the keynote, OpenAPI is on by default in your ASP.NET Web API projects in .NET 5. We hope to backport that to 3.1 at some point. I don't really have a ETA at this time, but if you do a brand new project with a brand new Web API project in .NET 5, you'll get OpenAPI by default unless you opt out of it. So we're going to talk about how we did that today as well. A couple components there. The first one is we partnered with the awesome team over at Swashbuckle. We've worked with them for quite some time. They put out a great NuGet package, or a series of NuGet packages that enable you to do OpenAPI generation directly from your Web API controllers. They also have a CLI, so if you wanted to build your OpenAPI or Swagger file at build time, you could do that. We actually do that in some publishing stuff that I'll show you later on. We also do a lot of stuff with NSwag as well, such as the client generation stuff inside of Visual Studio. And I'm excited to say Visual Studio for Mac also has the client generation stuff now as well. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But I really just want to go ahead and dive right in. And around all that stuff, we've also updated the HTTP REPL for .NET 5, so it supports all the new stuff that we've done, such as changing your default start page from root to /Swagger. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right in with a quick demo. So I've got Visual Studio open right here in a VM. It's actually that machine right over there. And one of the things that we started doing on the team right around the time COVID hit was we started trading around a lot of recipes. I know that Barry and Glenn have had quite a few conversations about, whose bread recipe is better. So I started thinking, well, let's build an API and a Powerapp so that we actually share our recipes and, put this to rest. Get it? Rest? Like REST APIs? Dad joke. Sorry. Anyway, let's go back into the code. So here you'll see that I have this startup CS. One thing that I'll do is I'll scroll down and you'll see that I've got a couple of extension methods that I'm using, such as this one right here. I'll be using David Pine's Cosmos DB wrapper here to do generic repositories. That's just his little handy helper method to dial it in. This handy helper method right here, add Swagger Gen, that is actually part of the Swashbuckle service light up. So when you do add Swagger Gen, you just pass it a config object, and then I can say c.swagger. And I can provide the name or the version of my stuff if I want to. Now you'll see here that we've got OpenAPI info. That's actually a class that represents the metadata of any OpenAPI document. It comes out of a NuGet package written internally by an awesome friend of mine named Daryl Miller. Thank you, buddy. Called Microsoft.OpenAPI. So that is actually one of the packages that a lot of the different REST API and OpenAPI things at Microsoft use, as well as a couple of different open source projects. One thing I'll show you right here. Now, this comes out of Swashbuckle, so that comes from the great Swashbuckle crew. This is an extension method that I've added right over here in my infrastructure folder. Now, this code's going to be out on GitHub. After this talk, Isaac Levin's going to rub some CI/CD on it for us and deploy it automatically whenever I do a commit. Right here, I'll just do a peek definition, and I'll show you how I discovered the awesomeness of Swagger long, long ago. Was that I wanted to document my web APIs. That's all I wanted to do, and that's how I met up with the Swashbuckle team. Was they have this fantastic ability for me to actually take / comments and decorate not only my Web API methods, but if I had models and I actually decorated those models with / comments as well, all of that stuff will be surfaced up inside of the OpenAPI document and inside of the Swagger UI test page, so that folks who discover that Swagger UI test page or that I give it to and want to see documentation about how to use my API, it just surfaces right up. You can actually put all your / comments directly in your C# code, and you can use a handy method like this. This is actually in our docs.ms.com on the swashbuckle.for-web API, but you can see here that all I'm doing is I'm getting in all those XML comments at build time, and I'm going to put those into my OpenAPI document. Now, that's how I enlist all of the Swashbuckle services, and you don't need to worry about it because we do all of this for you in the template. We didn't just give you a NuGet package reference with no idea how to use it. We went ahead and did the right thing for you too, because we heard from some customers, even myself, who've used the package for years. Sometimes I forget how to do a method here. Sometimes I forget how to wire this up. Please do it for me. So we just wanted to make that as easy as possible for everybody. Well, if I scroll down here to configure, and I want to point out where we're doing this, you'll see here inside of the is development. So we're only lighting up the Swagger document generation and the Swagger UI if I'm in development mode. We have a lot of customers who don't mind having that turned on in production. I personally like to turn it off so that I can only enable discovery when I'm in development. If I'm working with somebody in another team, they can try my API out. Once I'm outside of development or I'm outside of my dev zone, I'll usually turn that off just because I don't want to have accidental discovery. If I need that file, I've got it somewhere that I could actually use it, or I could just do it from my IDE. But the point is here is that this app.useSwagger, again, this is also going to be in the template inside of the is development block. All that does is that specifies how I want to generate that OpenAPI document. Now, they recently added support to generate not only in JSON format, but in YAML format too. And you'll see here that I'm doing serializes v2, which is kind of the lowest common denominator in terms of my OpenAPI document. This is essentially going to be Swagger 2.0 JSON document. Okay, so it's really your lowest common denominator. Most folks have migrated to supporting OpenAPI. A lot of folks have migrated to supporting OpenAPI v3 with YAML as well. But for those who haven't, I just want to do v2 just to make sure we cast a wide net, if you will. And then the other thing that I do is I turn on the Swagger UI, which we looked at briefly in the keynote. And if you were to look in the properties and launch settings JSON, you'll see that the Swagger URL is actually hard-coded as the default URL. So at this point, that's kind of the walkthrough as to how you would basically dial in Swashbuckle, which we already do for you in the template. One thing I do want to call out here is over in the controllers that we have. One thing you'll notice is that whenever I use HTTP GET or POST or any of these, I specifically use the name property to name my method. And what that does is there's a property inside of your OpenAPI JSON file called operation ID. And things like nswag, the generate clients, which we actually use inside of Visual Studio and Visual Studio for Mac, and internal projects like Autorest, they actually use that operation ID to generate client names. And as you'll see in a little while, so does Power Platform. So I want to stress that if you're doing these, if you're into OpenAPI and you want to make sure that your OpenAPI document can well be ingested by any multitude of OpenAPI tooling, I would encourage you to use this name property, kind of how I've done in this code here. So I just want to point that out. When you use name, you get the operation ID. Operation ID is a good thing, and it will spare you a lot of nightmares and headaches. So I'll just summarize it that way. So at this point, I'm ready to go. I've got my API all wired up, and I'm going to make sure that I've got my web browser set to Edge. Talk about that next. And right here, I'm just going to go ahead and hit F5. And we're going to spin up this API I'm just using Kestrel here because I usually dev on a Mac, so I tend to take out the IIS stuff just so I'm running the same way in each environment. But you'll see here that now I've got my Swagger UI page. You'll see that it's basically drawn out all the different endpoints for all of my individual Web API controller operations. And then if you look here, you'll see that I've got get all the ingredients, create a new ingredient, and same thing down here for recipes. So I've taken those / comments and I've fed those directly into the OpenAPI JSON, which is then surfaced up directly into the Swagger UI test page. And now I can just kind of try the API out. Why do we do this? Well, in the old days, if you were building a web API project, whenever you hit F5, you might remember that you would just get a blank page. That wasn't a great experience. So we improved it recently, and the way we improved it was when you hit F5, you just go right to the GET request of that API, and you just see a payload of JSON. If you're like me, you have JSON formatter extensions installed, but for a lot of folks who didn't, it was just a blob of unformatted JSON. I think you're going to like this experience a lot better when it comes to debugging your API. So what I'll do here is I'll hit execute, and this is literally just going to come back to localhost. Localhost is going to reach out and make a call out to my Cosmos DB. If I scroll down here to my get response, you'll see that I've got all of this stuff right here inside of basically all my different recipes that I've got. And if I were to scroll, you can see that I've got a 200. I can literally see all the different HTTP response codes that I need. Now, for posting, it's always been interesting because you'd have to like fire up a third-party tool or something like that. It's never easy to like get your bearer token and jack it into your request. So what we've done with the Swagger UI page is we've made it easy for you to be able to do posts. So what I'll do here is I'll find my create recipe method, and I'll just put a breakpoint right here, and I'll flip back over, and at this point I'll expand post, and then I'll scroll down and I'll try it out. And what I'll do here is I want to create a new type of bread. I think if I've got a lot of breads in there already, I can't think of anything else. We'll go with walnut bread. I think there's walnut bread out there probably. If there's not, Barry should probably invent that. We'll go ahead and hit execute. Now we're debugged. So you can see that I can look at that request, and we can see the payload coming over. There's my walnut bread payload request. I'll just hit continue, flip back over to my Swagger UI and scroll down. And now you can see right here that I've got my walnut bread created. So I'm going to do something really quickly. I'm going to copy this ID because we're going to use that here in a minute. So copy that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to close down this browser, and I'm going to flip over real quick to this page. So just before the session, I had a request. Please show us how to dial in the ACTP REPL as a debugging tool, because we've shown it a lot. And there is a blog post out there. I don't have that pulled up. Literally right before I went on stage. I had a Twitter request, so I apologize. Reach back out to me, and I'll give you that dev blog URL in a minute. But the great PM, Angelos, wrote that, the guy who created all this, who drove a lot of these different tools that you're seeing here with me. He actually wrote a great blog post on devblogs, Microsoft.com/ASP.NET. It's kind of an old one, but you go back, you'll see that he walks through how to get it set up in VS Code, in VS for Mac, and in Visual Studio. The first step is you'd have to go out to NuGet and do a search for ACTP REPL. There's two. You want to get this one, Microsoft.NET HTTP REPL. You'll see that that's the latest version, is the 5.0 preview. And if you want to grab it, all you would do is copy that, and you would run it from the command line, and it's going to drop it into the folder where all of your other .NET tools get dropped. That folder is different for each person, or not each person, it just depends on your profile. So what I want to point out here, I've seen it different on my machine a few times. The way you would do that is, I'll go right here and I'll show you how we've got the browse with, and you'll see that I've actually already done it here. I've already got the REPL here, but what you would do is you would say browse with, it's going to fire it up for me. Now it's going to ask me this, and you'll see here that's the .NET REPL, and this is where it happens to be. You'll see here that on my Windows drive, it's C users, reg, the .NET, and then tools, and then ACTP REPL.exe. So you would literally just hit add right here, and you would find that tool on your path. You don't need any arguments, leave the arguments blank, and then you would give it a friendly name. I call mine .NET HTTP REPL. And what that does is that gives me the opportunity to be able to set, that's running, so let me kill that. What that gives me the opportunity to do right here is to set the REPL as my browser, so that whenever I actually go in and I hit F5 right here, the REPL is going to pop open for me. There we go. So that's popped open, and you'll see that it went ahead immediately and interrogated my endpoint and found that OpenAPI file, went ahead and ingested that OpenAPI file, and now it knows what to do. So what I'll do here is I'll do ls, or I can do a dir, uses either set of commands, and I'll do a clear screen here, and I'll once again do ls, and this time I'll do cd, I'm just going to type that and then hit tab, so I'll point that out. And now you can see that I'm inside recipes. And I want to see all the different calls that I can make with recipes. So I'll do ls here. I can do a couple different things. Now remember that ID that I copied before? So right here, I would literally just say, paste in. Oh, darn it. Copied the wrong thing. Oh, sorry. Lost about a minute. All right, let me do ls again. So what I'll do now is I'll cd into search, and you can kind of imagine you're traversing the endpoint here. So now it's recipes/search. And if I do an ls here, and I've got this, and I can literally say something like banana, and it will go out and do a search for anything that has the word banana in it. You can see there. There we go. If I were to do get rye, I could do that. So now if I wanted to, I could literally go into here. I could copy that. I could CD back. And this is kind of neat. I can literally CD. Then I could do a get. I just want to show you have that capability. You have a lot of different capability inside the REPL. I like it because it kind of helps me with API design. If I can kind of navigate it through the REPL, people can probably figure the API out because it's more like a directory structure, and that seems pretty logical for folks. So I just want to stress that to folks and show you how to use the REPL to party and stuff. We've also got great help in there. So if you wanted to change anything, you can actually take a look at the help. If I wanted to do a post here, let me just point this out. Right here, I'll just go into recipes, and I'll just do a clear screen one more time. And at this point, I would just type the word post, and watch what happens. It's actually going to open up VS Code. Now, I have configured VS Code as my editor. You can do that using your prefs here, but if I wanted to do something here, I could do peanut butter bread. I'll do that, and then once I close VS Code, you'll see that it actually made that request, and we're good to go. So right here, I'll go ahead and exit, and I'm going to close this down as well and go back over to our PowerPoint because we want to keep on rolling. So we didn't stop at the ability for you to very easily get started with an OpenAPI decorated web API project. We wanted to make it easy for you to take that OpenAPI web API project and integrate it across Azure, across third parties, and with things like Power Platform. We already have great features inside of Azure Studio that enable you to generate strongly typed C# clients that we use some open source products for as well. Like NSWAG and RS and stuff. We're going to be improving upon those things. And again, we just added this to VS for Mac as well. But one thing that I wanted to kind of show you how to do is that you can right-click publish your API now that you've got OpenAPI enabled by default. You can publish this out to something like Azure App Service. And we've added an additional step directly inside of the publish flow so that you can actually import your API directly into API management. We did this so you don't have to go fumbling with the URL or worry about anything. We generate the Swagger file for you at build time, and then we just push it up in the API management and light up a new API. So with that said, let me show you how we're going to build a quick little application using this publish feature and the Power Platform. So now I'll right-click on my project here, and I'll just do a right-click publish. And again, I know friends don't let friends right-click publish to anything other than their personal development environment. So after this session, stick around because Isaac Levin is going to come on and show you how to take everything that I'm doing here in this exact same code base and do it all with CI/CD and GitHub Actions. So what I'll do first is I'm going to go ahead and create a new publish profile, and I'm going to go ahead and select my target as App Service on Windows since it supports .NET 5 out of the gate right now. I'll go ahead and select it here. I'll click next, and now you'll see that I have this API instance, or this API management instance right here. How does it know to do that? Because I've got swashbuckle.ASP.NET Core as a NuGet package in this project. So you can do this today with existing web API projects just by enlisting in Swashbuckle. You can get this for free. So I've already got an API created, so I'll just go here and click next. This is where Isaac will take over next. I'll click finish, and got everything ready to go. At this point, I think everything is configured. I'm not sure what this is barking about, but what I can do is just make sure that my stuff, it looks like it's okay. I've got that there, I've got that there. I'll just go and do a publish. So now what's going to happen is we're going to package up the code. We're going to publish it up to Azure App Service on Windows. Once it's published up into Azure App Service on Windows, I'm going to use the Swashbuckle CLI. We just do this inside of the build for you right away. We use the Swashbuckle CLI, and we build the OpenAPI file, and then we push that OpenAPI file right up into Azure API Management. so that you can do crazy things with it, like integrate it with Logic Apps, integrate it with Powerapps. You can use Azure API management to actually control access to customers. We know a lot of customers who build APIs, and their API is their business. So in a lot of cases, you want to control access and monitor how people are actually using those APIs. So you can see, since I've got the HTTP REPL open, it went ahead and used that to do the browse. It's already opened this up. You can see behind it, the website has been restarted. The Swagger file has been generated and pushed up into Azure API management for me. And now I can go over to my Azure portal, and I'll show you that this is my API management instance that we just published into. And if I go right here over to APIs, there's my recipe API. Now you can see that we've already ingested all of these individual operations that I could perform. And if I were to click on settings, you'll see right here that that's my Azure Websites.net domain. And it knows that my Azure Websites.net only accepts HTTPS, because that's a good idea. So it's gone ahead and we've already configured this to be HTTPS. I've got this subscription required box disabled because it's just my personal development environment, and I just kind of want to make sure that things are working before I go ahead and lock everything down using API management's built-in API key security. But if I wanted to, I could go ahead and test it just by going here to get all recipes and just give this a quick fire. And it takes a second for that first call, but now you can see that we're actually doing that request back to our Azure app service, and we're getting the stuff back. That's great. So how hard is it to get this into Power Platform? Not hard at all. The awesome folks over in the API management team have worked closely with the awesome folks in the Power Platform team, and they've given us this great ability. So what I just did here was go right-click Export. I can select Powerapps and Power Automate. That's the environment into which I want to publish. So I'll go ahead and click Export. And while that's exporting, one thing that I do want to point out right here is in my PowerPoint deck, I want to scroll one step. We talked earlier about generating OpenAPI clients. That's done through the magic of this thing inside of Visual Studio for Windows and for Mac called Connected Services Experience. You can right-click on Connected Services and say, I want to create a new connected service. You can select gRPC or OpenAPI. And then you basically give it that OpenAPI file, and it will generate a strongly typed C# client for you directly into your project, either on Windows or on Mac. It's pretty handy. So at this point, I'm going to go back to my portal and find my portal. My apologies. So that's been exported. Yep, we've been exported. Now, if I go over here to Powerapps, I just do a quick refresh. Now, this is what's called a Powerapps custom connector. That is the idea of a connection back to my API. There's a lot of different built-in connectors, like the Google Maps connector, or the Office connector, or the Cosmos DB connector, or the Secret connector. There's a million of them. They're already in the box. But if there's one that you need to build to wrap around your API to enable your citizen developer colleagues to be able to talk to your backends that you've already built, you would do that with a custom connector. So right here, I'm going to go in and remember how I turned off authentication? Well, I want to make sure that I turn that off in here as well. It kind of comes over by default as the API key. So I'm just going to turn that off, and I'm going to update that connector. And once that's finished updating, I can actually use that connector inside of an app. Luckily, I've already written an app because we're almost out of time and I want to take some of your questions. So once this connector is saved, there we go. No authentication, got everything turned off. Let me move my Mac bar there. Sorry about that. I can go over here to apps, and you'll see right here that I have this app. And I'm going to right click it and say edit. And it might say, I see that you've already got a recipe API connection in here. It might ask me to authenticate myself. It's going to just use see that I'm already logged into this tenant using my AED creds. There we go. I'll sign in. It's going to give me authentication because I already did it. I'll click allow. And the only reason I did that is I didn't want to go through all the code. Now, to create this UI, all I had to do was drag in buttons and put text boxes on the form. If you've never done anything with Powerapps and you don't like getting into the nitty-gritty of native dev, nothing against native dev, it's awesome, you guys are fantastic. But if you just need to burn out an app that's going to be used by people within your organization, Power Platform is a really great way to just kind of get started on stuff and continue on. So you'll see here that I've clicked on this Show Me All Recipes button, and I go up here to this bar, and I'm going to zoom in on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you that I've got this variable called the Recipes Collection. What's going to happen is this clear collect is a built-in method inside the Power Platform. It's going to literally clear that collection out, and then it's going to call the recipe API.getRecipes method, my API method, and then it's going to navigate over to the next page. And if I were to zoom out here, you'll see that if I click on this button, It's almost the same thing. I'm going to clear that collection of recipe API search recipes by name, and then I just give it the text value of this text box, and then we navigate to the next page. It should just work. So if I go over here and I just click the F5 button, if you will, to run my Power App, now I'll say show me all recipes. There we go. It's actually showing you all the recipes. Looks like a champ. I didn't even have to really write a whole bunch of code. I want to go back. I want to bring up one thing. Would be great. You probably thought this before, but wouldn't it be great if I'm working on the back end of this, and my buddy Pierce or somebody else is working on the UI of it, and they say, hey, I'm making some changes to the UI, or in this case, like I'm noticing that it's not sorting by, it's not sorting alphabetically, and that would be a lot more user-friendly. And I'm thinking, well, it'd be great if I could put a breakpoint on my code and actually have you try it out. So what I want to do is I'm going to show you something that we're thinking of building in the future. And it's just sort of it's not really any product truth to it yet, but what we're thinking of doing is giving you the ability so that whenever you make a code change right here, we know that you're already wired up to something like API management. We know that you're already using something awesome like, I don't know, live share. So what if we could use the live share tech to basically enable a localhost tunnel back to me? So that all I would have to do would be to hit F5, debug my app. Then I could ping my buddy Pierce and say, hey, my app is running. Go ahead and try out the UI. I'll see if everything is still working. And he could go over here and hit show me all the recipes, and then I could look right here and I could see it come in. And then I could say, looks good, looks good. I'll hit continue. What do you see? And Pierce sees what he wanted to see. A newly alphabetized list that we worked on together remotely, because that's kind of how we have to work these days. Thanks a lot. I really enjoyed this. Last thing I want to do is just show you one more slide. I want to make sure you have calls to action. It's great for me to just sit here and show you all this stuff. I want you to go try this out. We love this new app model, being able to use OpenAPI and HTTP APIs together with Power Platform, Powerapps, and we think you will too. And I wanted to just invite you to go try all these things out. Try the REPL, try using Swagger UI, try firing up a consumption mode API management instance, which is what we give you for free whenever you try it out. And just try building a Power App with it and tell us what you think. Reach out to me on Twitter. You can see down there in the bottom left-hand corner is my Twitter handle. With that, I think we're out of time, so we can take some questions. Thanks a lot.
All right, can folks hear me now? All right, good. Technical issue solved. Okay,
Cool.
so let's go and jump into one question. So from Stephanus, with gRPC having the significant performance increase, do you foresee that becoming the new API standard for browser to backend communication? Or do you think the easy setup and configuration that ASP.NET Web API brings will keep it as preferred?
That's a really, really good question. I hate to give you kind of an obtuse answer, but I kind of hope both happen. I think that we've made it really, really easy for folks in the .NET community to get started with gRPC, both from a server side and a client side perspective. But gRPC requires some things on the network. HTTP 3, 2, I'm not sure. The Web API doesn't require. So there are scenarios where your client might not have that, or you might not have the capability to do that on your server side. And in those cases, it's really great to have something like OBED API in front or SignalR in front. But I will say this. I've also seen architectures where you will have a Web API in front, and that might be your the front door of your ingress. So I might have a Kubernetes cluster, and inside of my Kubernetes cluster, I'm running gRPC through all those services. And I might want to have a front door on it that's HTTP1, so that I have kind of a ubiquitous front door, whereas the gRPC stuff is more internal. I do think we're going to see more adoption of gRPC, and I hope that we see more tooling and more capability and more availability creep out there. Looking at you, App Service team, we want to get there one day. But I wouldn't say that it's either or. I would say use both. Just figure out when to use each one.
Awesome. It was a great presentation, Brady. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
And as you hinted, we're going to have Isaac Levin next to speak about deploying using GitHub Actions. So powering up your Azure with GitHub Actions. So let's get ready for that.